Hi, welcome to Calico and Pine. Today we're going to be making butternut squash soup. First you're going to need 1 onion. I chose red onion. Use whatever kind you prefer or have on hand. But we're going to be caramelizing this onion. I cut it pretty big, like strips. However, if you want to cut down on the cooking time, I suggest cutting it, like dicing it or cutting it more finely. The caramelization does add quite a nice flavor to the butternut squash. It melts well with the sweetness of the butternut squash to make it slightly more savory, which is what I was going for. But you're going to need 4 cloves of garlic with this. Use more if you want. If you don't want to cut up, mince up some garlic, then use some garlic from those jars that have them in like water or oil. If you use the ones with oil, you're going to need a little bit less butter or oil than what I used. I used half a stick of butter, which is 4 tablespoons of oil, if you don't use butter. But yeah, you're going to mince that garlic, and we're going to cook the garlic and the onions together. Here's the melted butter, and here's the garlic and onions. But you're going to need to break up the onions a little bit, like I'm doing here, so that they can cook. I definitely suggest adding some salt here to draw out water and to season every layer of your dish, as Becky at Acre Homestead preaches about doing in your cooking. I highly recommend looking into her videos. But yeah, if you want to add some seasonings here, I highly suggest doing it. The salt will draw out water, though, to help you with the caramelization process. It'll make it a little faster. And of course, we can't have butternut squash soup without butternut squash. If you want, you can use frozen butternut squash. I didn't because I don't have any on hand, but I did have a fresh butternut squash. Cutting up butternut squash is kind of annoying because it's more tough, so I definitely suggest, if you have a busier life, to use frozen butternut squash. I'm not quite sure on the measurements, but you will see in a minute in my mixing bowl how much this butternut squash ended up giving me. But as you're gonna see in a second, I kind of struggled to cut this butternut squash with the knife I was using. So if you can use a bigger one, if you're choosing fresh, I definitely suggest a bigger knife, because this one was just not it. It was definitely hard to cut it, and I didn't even cut it like completely in half. I cut it more like in a third. But yeah, if you don't want to use fresh, use frozen. It's a lot easier. All the power to you if you think ahead enough to use frozen. But here you'll see about the size that I cut my butternut squash chunks into. If you want to make it cook faster, I definitely suggest doing it in smaller chunks. I cooked these for about 35-45 minutes in the broth that I used. If you want to make it more like maybe 25 to 35 minutes, maybe cut in half. It might even take less time if you cut it in half than 25 minutes. I really don't know. But it would cook faster if it was cut smaller. I didn't really have anything, like any reason to cut it smaller. I didn't need this to be cooked that fast, but as you can see, this is how much it gave me. And we're going to be adding 2 cups of carrots to this. I used frozen carrots, excuse me, because I really didn't want to cut carrots. But also, carrots can range in size and shape, so I wanted to give a more accurate measure for this additional vegetable. Use whatever kind of vegetable you think would blend well with the butternut squash. I chose carrots because I like the flavor and they're just easy. There's no special rule to carrots, you know? I can definitely see not butternut squash, sorry, sweet potato tasting good in this recipe, if you want to use that instead. But yeah, 2 cups of carrots. And then here's what the caramelized onion looks like. You add your butternut squash on top of that, and 1 quart of broth. I used turkey bone broth. It's what worked best for me. I definitely suggest taking it off the heat before you blend it like this, because it is very hot, and I'm very lucky that I didn't get burnt. But take it off the heat, then return it to the heat instead of doing what I did before you blend it. Or if you're going to use a regular stand-up blender, I suggest letting it cool first. But here's what it looked like when I blended it, and this was very delicious. I added turkey into it when I served it with some fresh bread, and it was very good.